Alright, we gotta get up there.
Don't look down, alright?
Alright.
Just don't bloody look down. Nobody's gonna believe this.
We gotta get the flak gun.
This is madness. That gun is knocking 7 shades out of our lot. We have to grab it.
I can't really see it. Just straight ahead. Whoa!
Careful.
Yeah, they're firing at us from everywhere.
Don't stay out here. Keep moving. I see him. He's over there.
That's the guy.
So I've just finished playing Battlefield 1 single player, the campaign, and I thought this is definitely worth talking about because this campaign has shown a great improvement in quality when it comes to single player missions for DICE and their Battlefield series, but it also shows us that this can generally be done still in a very engaging and interesting way, although the focus of the main game is actually the multiplayer. So I want to talk about it, and I will, but first I would like to draw a comparison. Now if we take a look at the past games from DICE, and specifically the Battlefield games, we will notice that their campaign was fairly bland. I personally always enjoyed it, especially liked also in the Battlefield 3 that you had these co-op missions that were individually available, something that I missed in Battlefield 4 quite a bit. I used to play them with my girlfriend and we found it a lot of fun. But many people did not enjoy them. They were bashing it, and some were even suggesting that in general Battlefield should not have single player whatsoever. It's a waste of time, etc. Which I find to be extremely stupid, because the multiplayer game does not suffer from the addition of a single player game. It's just another plus for your money. So why would you want to not have it? If you don't like it, don't play it, but don't bash it. I assure you that if they were to just remove single player, they would not make a better multiplayer game. You know, these two things do not just exclude. Don't think that the money they save on single player will be available in multiplayer for you as an improvement. I honestly doubt that, because the multiplayer is already good as it is, and that's how they work. They try to develop it to a certain extent where they find it good enough, and then they try to make money out of it. So that would just be a loss for everyone. Also, people like me enjoy the single player campaigns quite a lot, so I think that will be a loss for people like me, a huge loss. Thankfully, the Battlefield creators, DICE, have not given in, and they have actually stepped up their game to such an extent that their latest campaign, the Battlefield 1 campaign, is awesome. And we have to consider that they theoretically had less to work with here, because, you know, Modern Warfare just offers a lot more to work with in terms of machinery and stuff you can use when compared to World War I. But they still managed to do it. And the greatest thing about it is that while it is not historically necessarily very correct, it's still very engaging, and through voice acting, through good writing, they've really managed to create 5 different characters. Actually, there's more of them in there, but 5 are the main ones that you get to play. 5 different characters with compelling stories. Each of them, even the most abstract one, which I find the 3rd mission to be, managed to get me engaged and to make me feel for these characters. I actually was on their side. I carried hope with them. It was excellent. It felt like a good movie or a great book to me, quite honestly. But let's start with the introduction. That's how the game started for me, and that's how it's going to start for you too if you play the campaign. The introduction is going to feature some heavy writing, in the sense that you know, the war to end all wars, stuff like that. That the war is hell essentially. And at the beginning, I was quite cynical when I read the message that this is a battlefield. I'm not expected to survive. I thought to myself, oh yeah, and now I'm gonna play a guy who's gonna mow down the enemy troops and fight through. I'm gonna win this. But of course, that's not how it was. They fought ahead and they didn't do that. I've seen something similar in other games. So they didn't do that. What they essentially did was they created a scenario which is impossible to survive. Constantly approaching enemy waves, non-stop onslaught at the same time, limited ammunition. You're at some point forced to take the ammo from your, well, not the ammo, the weapons from your enemies in order to fight them. And your death is certain. Although your health bar will regenerate and everything, it's still a certain loss. And I did die over and over again, and that was planned. But it was great because that was the moment in which DICE basically showed me a middle finger and thought, don't think, you know, straight out of my face told me, don't think you're so smart and funny. And I like that. That's not often the case, and I like to be wrong when it means that the game's gonna be better than what I think. And that's where it started, but I wasn't still hooked. What hooked me really was the first campaign mission where you play a tank driver. And I'll just name them all basically. First mission is Through Mud and Blood, where you play the tank driver. Second mission is called Friends in High Places, where you play a pilot. Third one is Avanti Savoia, where you play a Italian shock trooper in full body armor. The fourth one is The Runner, where you play an Australian. And the fifth one is called Nothing Is Written, where you join Lawrence of Arabia fighting the Ottoman Empire. And your character is actually a female called Zara. And I'll get to that. I actually really like that, although I personally hate it when I have to play a female for several reasons, which I'll explain. But first, let's get back to the first mission, the one called Through Mud and Blood, where you're the tank driver. This mission starts off fairly bland. You're just some guy called into a tank, and suddenly you have to drive it. It feels like one of those cases where the nobody gets promoted out of nowhere and everyone's surprised. Very unlikely scenario, but actually he does a good job. And the whole introduction, the great thing about the campaign is that there are a lot of cutscenes. There's a lot of voice dialogue. So what happens is you actually get to know the character very well in a very short time, because these missions are fairly short. I played through the whole game in one sitting, and you get to know also his comrades, and you get to sympathize with them. You dislike some, you like others, then you start liking the guys you didn't like. So as soon as a game starts forcing me to have an emotional response to what's happening, it's doing something right. And this was the case. These characters are all likable in their own ways. Even the asshole who's cheating and bad from the second campaign, even he becomes very likable because he's good-natured, essentially. All of them are the good guys. That is, however, one of my first critique for the campaign, and one of the few that I will have. The fact that you only get to play one side of the war, and especially the fact that you have, again, such a strong distinction between good and bad. And that's something that I so disapprove of. Even in World War II games, where you get to fight the Nazi soldiers, where, you know, we have concluded that the Nazis were the bad guys. You know, they were doing lots of fucked up shit. Although I am certain that the fucked up shit wasn't just on their side, the enemy was doing a lot of that too. But of course, the Nazis were doing things that were a lot worse, okay? That I am not arguing that. What I am arguing, however, is the position of them being the evil guys from their own perspective. The way they're portrayed is that you see a Nazi foot soldier somewhere, or you mow them down, all of them in the World War II game, like it's nothing. You make fun about it, you make jokes about and killing them in the most brutal ways. It's all good, you know. And that I don't personally believe that the foot soldiers, these guys who are nobodies, just dying by the thousands there, that they were in any way actually necessarily evil. I mean, maybe they believed the dogma, maybe they believed they were brainwashed into believing what they were fighting for. Actually, they definitely were. But I don't think that they are the guys who were in the concentration camps and torturing and killing Jews in the worst ways possible, etc. Now, I just want to make this very clear that I believe that that every war has two sides, and every side thinks it's right. I'm sure that if there was a possibility to go to in the time of World War II and speak to the Nazis, even to the worst of them, and ask them, hey, who do you think is the bad guy here? I'm certain they're not gonna say, oh, it's definitely us. It's definitely we're the ones doing it. We're the worst. We're assholes. You know, we're with the devil. No, everyone feels they're entitled. Everyone feels they're fighting for a good cause, and that's the thing that I'm saying. That games often, almost always as a matter of fact, fail to portray that, because the game developers are scared that they might say that, hey, you're making the Nazis look human, you're making the Nazis look nice, you know. And I'm talking about Nazis here, which is a different war from the one in Battlefield, I know, but I'm just making a point, so bear with me. So, you know, they're scared of people pointing fingers at them and stuff, especially with all the PC policing around right now. This bullshit is making things a lot harder for them. But unfortunately, in this war, in World War I, again, we do not see the other side represented in the campaign. You don't get to play as the Austro-Hungarian Empire, for example, and that is something that I miss. I find it just as a missed opportunity here. You give us a feeling of both sides. Everyone thinks they're right. Everyone thinks they're entitled. just as in a World War II, would be kind of awesome to play also as the Nazis and see how they lose at the end. I bet you there are soldiers in there with interesting stories. There are good guys in there too who just fight for their country and who fight for what they believe is right, even if it isn't. Essentially, the saying that the history is written by the victors, by the winners, is right. It is so. I assure you that if World War II, for example, had been won by the Nazis and now the whole world was a giant Germany, you know, Nazi Germany, you and I, my viewer, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about Nazis like they were the menace of the world. We would be saying about how heroic Hitler was, etc. So, again, I find that unfair, and I find that it's a missed opportunity in every game to give us a chance. Well, not every. Some games give you a chance to play as the so-called bad guys always, but I find it that here this distinction would have not even been a problem because the World War I positions were very mixed. I mean, how can we even say that it is wrong to start a war if your emperor is killed in case of the Austro-Hungarians? The emperor gets killed, you start a war. That's almost a natural response. So, you know, from my personal perspective, and this is extremely subjective, I know, but there were no good or bad guys, essentially. So there were just strong guys, you know, who were bugging the smaller guys, and yeah, you could say that's bad. But I think that essentially everyone gets there, you know. Look at the big corporations. Look how they're suppressing the smaller ones. Just read about what Luxottica is doing. Luxottica is the corporation about glasses and stuff. But I digress again. So again, I wish we would have had a chance to play both sides, but the side that we get to play is still awesome. In the first campaign, our tank driver engages with several of his comrades, loses a few of them. You get to play stealth, and I want to talk about stealth a little bit more here because I think stealth is awesome in this game. While Battlefield 1 is obviously not the kind of game designed for you to play stealth in, it actually works really well. They managed to make the AI behave in an interesting way. Of course, it's not perfect because, again, this is not a stealth game to begin with. So the AI has some problems. For example, they have practically no peripheral vision. They also can't see further than 2 meters ahead of them. Maybe that's because I was playing it on easy. In all fairness, I haven't tried the harder difficulties. I'm more of a show me the story kind of guy. I don't I don't like the challenge against the AI. If I want challenge, I go play multiplayer. That's where the more interesting fights come. But again, the AI is not perfect, but it's still working pretty well. You have the whole, they're alerted and they give it up and then you start over. They also don't seem to be very impressed about corpses most of the time, so that's another thing. But AI seems to work pretty well essentially in sneaking missions, and since they have implemented stealth in a non-linear way, and these maps that you get are often very non-linear, especially later on in the desert. Since this has been done, unlike for example games like Modern Warfare and stuff where the stealth was essentially scripted and there was no real stealth, it looked really nice, but it didn't feel like it was a gameplay mechanic to work with. Since this has been implemented, you now have the possibility to make somewhat realistic campaigns. For example, like the 5th mission where you play as a woman, where she is essentially very stealthy. Obviously a woman is physically incapable of fighting men in a fair fight. Also, she gets to fight in a situation where she's outgunned and outnumbered, but she can do it because she's extremely stealthy, she's fast, she's nimble, and she gets the job done through to that. And that makes it believable, and that makes it somehow for me also absolutely appropriate to play as a woman in a war game where you get into close combat. Because in all fairness, I personally do not enjoy, and please don't account that to sexism, but I do not enjoy playing as a female, simply because every game that I play, I try to play from the perspective of a character. I try to get inside that character, so to speak of, especially games where you get to make choices, and I try to make the choices as the character, in my opinion, would make them. And it's very difficult for me to just be a woman in my head and to see myself as one in a game. That just kind of gets me out of this feeling of role-playing, if you will. And also very often women are portrayed in exaggerated ways that disturbs me. Additionally, either the main character of a game is way too sexualized, which just disturbs me again, because in most games I just find it inappropriate. Like a female soldier wearing super skimpy armor and stuff like that, just annoying to me. And all in all, I don't enjoy playing females. Here I actually felt it appropriate, and I enjoyed playing as Zara in the 5th campaign. The 2nd campaign that you play is in the sky, and that's another great thing. Each campaign presents you a different aspect of the actual game, and it's kind of a tutorial because it teaches you things like it teaches you to fly a plane here, and it teaches you to do aerial combat to some extent. And while this is not gonna be skills that you're gonna be very good with if you play multiplayer, it's still a lot of fun. And while these campaigns will make you do something as a main task, it will actually always freshen things up by giving you situations where you, for example, get out of the plane, have to go stealthy, or, well, you get to go stealthy if you want to. There's never actually a case where the game tells you go stealthy or you lose the game. So it's your choice. I just find it more interesting to play with it most of the time. And so in the 2nd campaign, you get to play a guy who's essentially an asshole. We see him cheating in a card game, stealing an airplane, presenting himself as somebody else, lying to several people, but he has a change of heart mid-game. And this change of heart thing is seen in several of the campaigns, in 3 of 5. So it's interesting because it's done in a very fluid and realistic way. So it makes you believe that these things that happen really make better people out of these soldiers, out of these normal people. And that's also part of the message, that war changes you. Some it changes for the better, some for the worst. But our characters are good guys, so they don't get changed for the worst. And in the 3rd mission, for example, where you play as an Italian shock trooper on his birthday who's telling his story to his daughter. And the story revolves about how his brother died, okay? You get to see his brother at the beginning, and he starts the story by showing a picture of his dead brother and explaining to his daughter that it's about time he told her the story of how he died. So we know his brother's gonna be dead, but the mission is told in such an interesting and compelling way that halfway through the mission, because he essentially at the beginning of the mission he offers support for his brother's unit, tries to protect him from very far by doing the best he can. At some point something happens and he suspects that his brother's in danger. You know, a lot of their units are dead, so he starts looking for him frantically. And this is where you actually start to feel for the character. You feel bad for him. I was holding my breath every time he was checking dead bodies, and I was thinking to myself, I hope it's not him. There was some kind of hope within me, although obviously the premise of the story is that the brother's already dead, but I was still hoping in a way. So that was pretty good. I really enjoyed that campaign, but also the others, like I said, and it just keeps getting better. The same situation with the runner, where you play this Australian soldier who gets assigned you know, a new recruit who is actually underage, and he lied about his age just because you're his hero. He wants to fight under you. And this soldier is like a father figure to him. At first he doesn't want the kid, then he starts being overprotective of the kid, not allowing him to do anything. And although again these missions are short, so everything's told in a short amount of time, it's done in such a fluid way that it's believable. So his relationship to this kid goes from get out of my face to let me teach you how to do this, I want to protect you, I'm gonna risk my life to save you at the end. So that is very well done again. And the 5th story, where you play as Zara and you are helping Lawrence of Arabia, this one does a great job at what she does. She's a likable character, and the thing I like about these stories also is that with the exception to one, and that's the runner, because there you play this Australian soldier who is essentially a very famous and legend in his own rights. All the other ones are absolute nobodies at the beginning, and they may remain a nobody or they may become somewhat more famous, but essentially they're telling their own personal story, which is interesting, but it is not the epic story of the grand hero who mowed down 1 million enemy soldiers and, you know, is immortal and stuff. You have a sense of their mortality the whole time, and you are going to try to keep them alive under overwhelming odds, and feel relieved when they are alive. I mean, one thing I forgot to mention in the first mission that I found great is at some point your tank is stuck in mud and you're overwhelmed by soldiers. So you have a pigeon, a carrier pigeon, which you're supposed to send out basically to tell your units, your artillery, to shoot at your position. You're overwhelmed, don't let them take the tank, we're lost anyway, let's send out the pigeon. You send out the pigeon, and then the game lets you fly as the pigeon. You get to control the pigeon while it flies back to command, and this time there's this sad music and stuff, and you're like, shit, I'm currently controlling this pigeon, and as soon as I get there, my character is gonna get killed because he's already, you know, almost dead. He's overwhelmed there. He's not gonna survive. At least gonna take his me. And it makes you think in that moment. You kind of feel reluctant to killing that character who you've grown to like at this point, who's a cool guy, and he does survive. He gets lucky. I don't want to spoil it. You should all play it for yourself and see how exactly it happens. But it's a great moment, and they through such mechanics like playing as the pigeon and stuff like that, they manage to get you into the story. They manage to get you in a position where playing the pigeon essentially is a cliffhanger moment. You are between the moment the pigeon is sent out and between the moment the pigeon reaches, you have time to think about the consequence of what's going to happen when the pigeon reaches. And this time is I think like 1-2 minutes you fly this pigeon, maybe even 3 to 5. I'm not certain anymore. But that just goes to show you how well it's done. If it made me think about it, the time flew by, and I have a subjective feeling of it being shorter or longer than it probably is. Both is a good thing essentially, because either I was dreading it and it felt like it took longer than necessary, or I was or in any case it's done well. You know, that is my point, and this is how it's going to continue. And the cool thing is that you get introduced to things like the Zeppelin, like the war train. You know, all these things are available in the campaign. All the maps that you know from multiplayer are shown to you in a little bit of a different spin, partially. And that's something that was in the previous campaigns as well, and something that I've always enjoyed, because especially if you've played the multiplayer first, like I usually am, you're going to have a feeling of deja vu. You're going to be like, oh yeah, this is that map, but it looks a little bit different. This is different, that's different. It is cool. It's awesome. And it's definitely worth doing. I definitely can recommend it to you. I think that anyone who plays this game is going to enjoy the campaign a lot. And I have to say, honestly, hands down, this campaign was better to me than the multiplayer. From obviously because it had a story and stuff like that. And I'm a person who gives a lot of importance to story. I go as far as to create my own story when I play multiplayer. I just imagine my soldier is a specific soldier with a specific task. I'd be like, okay, my task is to defend this objective with my life. And then I start seeing guys coming and I play that. When the soldier dies, I just invent a new scenario. This makes the game more interesting for me, although it sounds a bit crazy when I say it right now. It is a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun if you do this, and it can kill the boredom coming from the game. But again, that is not important for this particular aspect, because you get a story. It's a good story. You get to change your weapons from weapons crates. You get to try lots of different mechanics like bombarding stuff. You get to drive tanks. You get to drive planes. It's fun. You get to take down a few Zeppelins on your own. So it's great fun. It's going to keep you immersed in the happening. It's going to really make you feel like war is hell. The First World War was horrible. These people were absolutely screwed. I don't envy them, and I think that the bravery and the strength of character that these men and women out there, and I'm saying men and women, although there were no women, I think, on the battlefield, although you can correct me on that, I'm not a historian, but I think there were no women specifically fighting, but even the ones who were medics or doing communication, all these people who were participating in this are extraordinary people, and they're deserving in our respect. And this game actually made me appreciate it a little bit more, because until then, all I knew about the First World War were a few movies maybe and a few books. So it was a very abstract concept. Nothing gets you into any kind of happening or story, even if it's not very historically correct, like a good computer game, in my opinion. Or, you know, when I say computer game, I mean video games in general, not just for PC, but for all formats. And I think that DICE did a great job. I want to congratulate them for it here. And I hope that they will keep up the good work. And the other only criticism that I have is that the campaign felt short, in the sense that probably because I enjoyed it so much, I could have gone for more. Not that it's a normal length, I think. I played in one sitting, but I would assume that it took me about 5 hours to finish it. And, you know, I was playing on easy, so you could stretch that a lot if you play on higher difficulties, obviously. But I would have loved to see another maybe 5 campaigns. I don't know, that would have been great. I mean, if it pushed it to 8 hours for me without me, because that's the reason I play single player games on easy. I actually hate the idea of enemies who can, you know, either there are more enemies or I die faster or the enemy takes more shots. All of this is very annoying to me. I already was beginning to get annoyed with the flame soldiers and the guys who are excessively armored, especially because the guys who have body plate armor are not vulnerable in the parts where they don't have it. I went behind one guy, and that's actually what broke my stealth and pissed me off. And I tried stabbing him, and it just made it sound like I'm stabbing metal, like a clunky sound. And the guy turned around, saw me, broke my stealth. I had to deal with everyone the hard way. That was annoying to me. But you know, those are small things, and they're definitely things that I can look past. So again, DICE, keep up the good work. Give us more of the good stuff. I would actually, you know, really love to see a DLC with a single player on it. I know everyone's gonna scream boo at me and want to beat me up for that. My point is that I think it was great, and I would love more of it. I mean, I don't. If there was such a possibility, I would actually pay for more campaign missions. I like them. I thought they were awesome. If they're of this quality, definitely worth for me to make a DLC. But of course, we do want for you to continue making maps and other stuff like game modes, etc. Because the multiplayer's gotten a bit boring for me. In any case, I would like to thank everyone for watching the video, and I hope you take a look at the other ones. There are a lot of interesting ones, and in case you really feel charitable today, you could click that subscribe button down there, or not. And what also helps me is if you press the like button. That does some good for me too. I'm still a very small channel, and would be cool if I went from small to medium size at one point. That'd be pretty nice, but I'm not gonna insist. Again, thanks you for watching. If you've watched so far already, you've already been a most gracious viewer. So have a great day.